In this video, we're going to take a look at 5 important things that modern writers can learn from the classics. And this is not just technique, it's far deeper than that. And there may be things in here which you've never given consideration to before. So without further ado, my bookish friends, let's dig in, shall we? A lot of people who want to write today, who are desirous of maybe creating their first novel and selling it, they often think that classics are outmoded or outdated and they're not relevant, and that the way to write is to read modern works and see what's popular and copy that. Now, if you want to write a book that reaches deep into people, that outlasts even you, the most valuable thing you can do is to examine the classics. They are the truly great pieces of writing. Now, this video is not going to be all about how wonderful the classics are, although my channel is all about that. What I want you to do is just think of this, that every time in history that a book was written, it was once popular. It was once the present day that it was being written in. Now, there has been so much material thrown into the furnace of history. But when history has melted away, the cultural, the popular kind of faddish thing going on in its day, what comes out are the few bits of precious ore that last from generation to generation to generation. What is it about those that has the ability to always reach deep into people and constantly hold their attention? There must be something extremely potent that you can learn about the way they write, which if you could craft it yourself and become sort of eloquent in the use of those methods or understanding the ideas of those great authors, is going to only elevate your writing. And that's what we're going to talk about. 5 things that modern writers can learn from the classics. Don't skip on this video. In fact, if you're writing, you may want to save this because it will give you lots of pause for thought. So let's start with our 5 things. The first thing that writers can learn from reading the classics is the power of using metaphor. Now, I've read a lot of books, I've read a lot of classics, and although today when you see modern works written, there are similes and metaphors, there is quite a chasm between the great authors of the past and the fly-by-night modern authors that come out and succeed for a while and then disappear again. And one of those things is the great authors are all excellent at using metaphor. A metaphor, I'm not going to go deep into it. If you want me to, I could do a video on how to use simile and metaphor and when it's the best time to use them. But just to say, a metaphor is when you relate one thing and describe it as if it is something else. Virginia Woolf said, "Books are the mirror of our souls." A simile is similar to the metaphor, but it's when you say something is like something else. My life is like a burnt out tyre, okay? That's a simile because it's like. A metaphor is slightly stronger. Now, metaphors that you may commonly use are things like, they have a heart of gold, they have a heart of stone, he's a puppy full of boundless energy. Now, a lot of people today are writing and they put these kind of metaphors in, but what I want to say is they are worn metaphors, they are trite and they have no value. The only time you can use metaphors like they have a heart of gold or there's fire in his belly is when you are putting them in the words of one of your characters. And because they are not literary characters, they're just using the common modes of speech. Real metaphor is when you take the time to think deeply about how to relate what you're talking about as if it is something else. So to give you an example, Shakespeare, of course, I'm not saying go and read Shakespeare, but wow, was he good at metaphor. Think of As You Like It, the play. All the world's a stage. See, that's not the world's like a stage. All the world is. And what does it do to your emotion? It puts you into this transcendent space where you look, everything seems bigger and more inflated and more emotional. He also says the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. What about the one where he talks about the seeds of time, and if you could look into which grain would grow? Do you see how that's a metaphor? He's talking of time as if it is seeds. Now, metaphors are particularly brilliant. They go beyond "it is like." I'll give you an example of a simile. It is like, if you think of, say, William Faulkner, As I Lay Dying, he describes some clouds across the sky, and he talks about the clouds were like a group of dolphins swimming across the ultramarine sky. And then he said it was like an ancient wood carving. That's beautiful, it's evocative, but it's not as strong as a metaphor. Metaphors are like a great aurora borealis that sweeps and swirls above us. It's tangible, it's palpable, but at the same time it's full of the mystery and the intangible that you can't quite touch. It's where the magic happens. It's where your soul wakes up and says, I know what you mean by this. Metaphor is so powerful. What's his name? He wrote Fahrenheit 451, Ray Bradbury. He has a lovely metaphor when Guy Montag is being shown burning the books. His friend says, burn the first page, set light to the second page, and they become black butterflies. Well, you know what that is. The paper, as it burns, you see it float away like a black butterfly. It's so much more powerful than saying they're a bit like black butterflies, aren't they? Metaphor is more direct, it's more punchy, it transforms your world. And the great classic authors, if you read any great classic book, you will find metaphors crafted, not borrowed. Always the author crafts it themselves because they perceive it so clearly. If you want to write great evocative work, learn to use metaphor. The second tip that modern writers can learn from the great classics is one that's probably going to shock you, and you may never have heard this before. Great literature does not need to thrill or entertain. It can thrill, it can entertain, and for the most part it does, but it doesn't have to. If you were to read in the classic literature, the Russian school of literature, so we're talking Turgenev and Lermontov and Tolstoy and who else? Dostoevsky, of course, you'll notice that quite a lot of those are deep, introspective, sometimes grueling and hard works to get through. There's certain areas of great exploration of inner thoughts. Sometimes there's a great amount of detail placed on scenery or what's going on around them. Now, some people make the comment that people wrote all this scenery because they got paid per word. Rubbish. They wrote it because they were exploring life. And the literature that lasts the longest is life. Tolstoy was said to cut a slice of life in his books. Now, here's the thing about not necessarily thrilling or entertaining. If you want to do that, you really have to have something very specific you are trying from your experience to put words to, that you know other people have experienced but have only seen it in a hazy outline. You want to say something that people who are truly looking to learn about themselves, learn about the world they inhabit, to elevate the inner person, those who will take that time will read your work and just recognize themselves in it. They will come alive. Various emotions and passions will bubble up within them, but become almost concrete, where they can hold it and for once in their life say, this here, this is sorrow, this is love, this is joy, whatever it may be. When you write with a specific expression that you want to make, it's normally drawn from your own life. When you're writing not to thrill nor entertain, but to share some incredible gem, some moment of time that you've captured for all posterity, your writing becomes a coat of many colours. It bestows distinction upon your work. It makes it stand out among its brethren of other works of literature. It goes beyond just titillating and giving scintillas of emotion that bubble up, make you laugh, make you smile. This makes you know who you are. Now that's something you will learn in some of the great authors. George Eliot is very good at this. The amount of people that say to me, oh, Middlemarch is boring. She's not writing to entertain and thrill. She's writing to show you people living. There are other people who do that kind of thing as well. Dostoevsky, read Crime and Punishment. He's really getting you to explore inwardly into yourself. So, if you want to write great literature and you want to take your book or your novel in a way that's more unique, on the road less travelled as it were, then maybe give up the idea of just writing to entertain and to thrill and share something meaningful from your life. The third lesson that modern writers can learn from the classics is extraordinarily moving. If you get this, a light bulb might go on in your mind. And it's to treat setting and scene like a character. Now, you may love descriptive writing. I know I do. You may love just detailing and filling out the intricacies of the tapestry of your work. But frequently people don't actually treat the scene as a character itself. Now, I'm not saying every setting and scene is a character, but all stories take place within a world. And people talk about world building. But you know, it's not just a case of a load of techniques to world build. It's identifying the whole nature of the world. If the world could speak, what tone would it speak in? If the world was a time period, what time period would it be and how would it dress? Now, to look at things like this, there are various authors, for instance, who bring to life their scenery. Some of the strongest at this, Dickens. Dickens uses London. It is his greatest character. It features in all of his books and takes on a persona. The great thing about Dickens is it's not just all of London, but if I think right now of Bleak House, you have Chancery Court. Just read the first page of Bleak House and see how Chancery Court is laid out. It's this brooding character in the background, very grey, very foggy, very mysterious and bewildering. But in Bleak House, there is also an area where the poor live called Tom All Alone. The way Dickens handles Tom All Alone is as if those buildings and windows were talking to him. And Crook's shop, his pawn shop, has a whole vibe about it. It's more than an atmosphere. It almost channels its voice through Crook himself. Someone else who's brilliant at making scenery a character in the book is Emily Bronte in Wuthering Heights. Everyone says the windswept moors of northern England. It's very true, but those moors talk. That moment when the narrator goes in to the room in Wuthering Heights and he's laying down there and then the tree outside in winter is scratching on the window, tapping, and then scratching, almost becomes an embodiment of Cathy trying to get into the house. And Emily Bronte never ceases with that. Whenever the description comes up of the moors around her area, it's never just for backdrop. It itself is the god of the book, imbuing the whole story with a passionate force, a life, a vivacity. And that's what makes it so powerful. Balzac, if you want to read an excellent author from France, Balzac, like Dickens, he grabs hold of Paris, all the different areas of it. If you were to read old Goriot or Père Goriot, just look at the way he describes Maison Vaquer, okay? It is only a place, but as the book progresses, it's the mother character in whose womb all the others sort of move and turn and kick and bite each other. It's very, very powerful. So if you love writing and you love descriptive writing, go beyond just seeing it as an accurate description of scene. Treat the main areas of your action, the place where the lovers meet, the place where the friends divide, the place where the person goes and kills themselves. Turn it into a character that almost speaks beyond the narrator to the reader. The fourth lesson that modern writers can learn from reading the classics is to distill a truth. To distill means to take anything away from the essence of a substance that dilutes it. And so you're left with a very punchy, forceful idea of sometimes an insight, sometimes an observation, sometimes a lesson if you want to do didactic kind of writing. This is a bit similar to our second one, where you don't just write to entertain and to thrill, but this is separate because in a book that is for entertainment, that is for a thrill, it's vital that you have something beyond just a story, just a hackneyed bump in the night, to actually make your reader say, whoa, that's true, a distilled truth. That's very observant. I recognise that. The classic writers, the ones who have lasted generation to generation to generation, they took the time to think deeply about what emotion they felt themselves inside and wanted you to have. They didn't just want you to feel in love or sad or laugh or jump. They wanted you to be able to hold why that thing made you jump. It gives so much more pleasure. It's what taste is. When you talk about literary taste, that's what taste is. It's going beyond the in-your-face, sharp, sour, super sweet, super hot effect of just bold-faced literature. This is being able to take the nuances. I felt so tense in this, and the reason was because the author distilled a truth. And that could just be about characters, about the life around you, or an emotion. So writers who do this, Hemingway does this. You may not like Hemingway, but just read his books and see how he evokes scenes for you. His scenes are so real, they're so true, and yet he uses such a limited amount of words. And actually his vocabulary is pretty limited in range. It's quite deliberate. He had a big vocabulary, but he holds it down. Read the opening paragraph, or A Farewell to Arms. Now there's a great opening paragraph. It draws a scene so fast, with so few words, and actually the lack of ornamentation makes it real. And you sit there at the end of that first paragraph and think, I believe in this place. I know it to be true. Fitzgerald, F. Scott Fitzgerald with The Great Gatsby. He as well, he distills truths. Read Tender is the Night. I mentioned Great Gatsby, but Tender is the Night. The truth of being passionately in love with someone who is broken. How it feels. The turmoil. Tender is the Night is a beautiful, beautiful piece of work. It's slow moving. It is engaging, but it's still quite slow and plodding. It is not genre fiction. Nothing wrong with genre fiction, by the way. However, it's not the fiction that lasts unless it has other aspects that we're talking about here. And so J.L. Carr, he's another one. Sort of a modern classic. In A Month in the Country, a particular favourite of mine, just get the sense, the distilled truth, that we are walking in the footsteps of 1,000 other people, that other lives have been lived and lost before ours in the same place that we stand, thinking similar things to us, having affections similar to us. That book, A Month in the Country, is exquisite. It's short, it's 100 pages. I recommend anyone who is a writer to read that book. There is so much to learn from it, and it just lifts you as a reader. It's got poignancy. So that's the fourth part, or the fourth thing we can learn from the classics if we're writing, is to take the time, and it takes a lot of hard thought, to distill exactly what insight you're trying to share. Put it in a nutshell, and then from that, I say nutshell, acorn, from that acorn, let it expand out and let the story become the great oak which dominates its surroundings. The fifth lesson that modern writers can learn from the classics is all to do with good and bad characters. And it's this: sympathetically write all of your characters. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, frequently in a lot of modern literature, popular literature and genre fiction especially, you have the goody, who may have a couple of foibles which, oh bless them, it's not their fault, and the baddie, who you hate and despise and they're rotten. Great literature is way more nuanced than that. Remember, great literature captures life. And what's the one true thing in life? Is there really an angel in life? No. Everyone has elements of themselves which are unpleasant, ugly, gritty, and, you know, we all behave sometimes like a spoiled child. Some people talk too much, some people are aggressive, some people may laugh at everything and that annoys you. No one's perfect, but neither is anyone a real devil. I mean, there may be one or two, but generally speaking in day-to-day life, there are no absolute villains. Now, if you're writing genre fiction like James Bond, then of course make your villain an absolute baddie, because that is pure entertainment, okay? However, one of the things I find in a lot of writing is that there's too much chiaroscuro, you know, black and white, like stark black and white. So you've got the goody and the baddie. Whereas when you read the classics, there are so many characters, even the bad guys. In fact, you're not the bad guys, they're the antagonist. They're not bad, they just are the inhibition to the hero's result. And most great writers don't condemn those who are in the way of our hero. They understand. They may not agree with them, they may highlight their flaws, but they present them to us unjudged. And they would arguably ask us not to get on our high horse and look down on them. Thomas Hardy is very, very, very good at this. In Tess of the D'Urbervilles, you have Tess. And she's a great protagonist. She's a wonderful heroine, but she's not ideal. She makes so many silly mistakes that sometimes you just want to shake her. But then she meets Angel Clare. Angel Clare could be such a good hero alongside Tess, a great lover. But boy, does he drop some clangers. And easily I see some readers just go, oh, I didn't like him. Why? Because he did that and I didn't like it. You've judged a whole character by one act. Look how Hardy writes Angel Clare, and you'll actually see that Hardy recognises Angel Clare is a pretty decent guy. That he's doing things because he thinks they're the right thing to do. That he is unwittingly influenced by the society without. It's not totally his fault. And that's one of the brilliant things in reading a book like from Thomas Hardy, John Steinbeck. John Steinbeck writes characters like that too. Very sympathetic to the down and outs, the deadbeats, the people who society looks askance upon. But even those who get in the way and do things which upset our main protagonist, well, Steinbeck doesn't just dive down their throats to have a right go at them and make us think this is the bad guy. That, again, is lacking in taste. It's very saccharine. You know, it's very sweet. It's instantly recognisable. Oh, this is supposed to be sugar. This is sugar. It's a Mars bar. It's a punch of sugar. It's not a delicate blend, a balance of flavours. But when you get Steinbeck and the way he handles his characters, you read of Mice and Men, beautiful, beautiful use of characters. Are they flawed? Yes. Can you dislike them? Yes. Does he judge them necessarily? No. You may sense he has a feeling towards his characters, but he tends to withhold, to restrain himself from judging. So in other words, he is a sympathetic writer. And if you can master that, that will take your writing almost to, well, it will take it to a different level, but a level many readers won't know how you've got there. They'll sense there's something different. It's because it's nuance. You're sympathetic to all the characters. It's not easy for them to out and out hate somebody. Dickens does this with Pip in Great Expectations. So many people, Pip is the hero, Pip is lovable as a child. So many people say, I can't stand Pip. Oh, he was a bounder the way he turned out and what he did and all that. Miss Havisham is clearly an antagonist, but we're given enough from Dickens to understand why she is who she is. It also helps us understand how Estelle turns out the way she is and not to be too harsh on her. And if we really, really had the idea that Dickens had got in writing Pip, you'd recognise that you shouldn't dislike him. You're just going by one point, but if you look at how Dickens handles him, he's a noble character, but he's deeply flawed. So he's not an angel, but he's not a devil either. He's a guy trying his best. That's a real skill to get in your writing. So, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Which of the 5 lessons do you feel that you would like to incorporate into your writing most of all? And secondly, if you're not a writer, but you like reading, which of these lessons do you think you'll be keeping your eye out for most of all? I will do more videos on this. If you want videos of any topic, please leave suggestions down below, but be sure to subscribe. And if you're in a writing group, share this video. Until the next time, I wish you joy in your reading.